teacher representatives who speak to important issues with regard to the school, provide recommendations to the school administration, and so forth. We've had some excellent conversations. And coming from that, we have the very substantial beginnings of a comprehensive plan to address the broad issues of racial equity and restorative justice at Jones. This includes, but is not limited to, a number of things that were directly recommended by the PPLC. Those include professional development for faculty and staff members, especially along the lines of anti-racism training, so that everyone in our school community, all the adults and personnel in our school community, have a clear understanding of what it means to help our school become an anti-racist school environment. That is going to be an ongoing process. It's one of the major pieces of a comprehensive plan. It will begin as soon as we are able to contract with an outside organization. This is something the PPLC had asked us to do, to contract with a credible organization. That organization will be doing two major things. Number one, will be providing us with assessment. They'll be assessing our school environment, our school climate and culture, and providing us with recommendations on how those things can be improved along the lines of what the concerns have been voiced by so many people. In addition, that assessment will include directions we can go with regard to professional development for our faculty and staff. This will be, especially the professional development portion, will be an ongoing full school year program, obviously with follow-up in coming years, checking to see where we are in the process. We are looking at developing not only, and of course we're challenged by the remote environment, but in some ways that might actually assist us logistically. But we're committed to at least monthly meetings with our faculty and staff with regard to developing the anti-racism understandings, knowledge, and our capacity to address the concerns of our school family. That is one area of significant importance to improve the climate and culture of our school. A second area, coming from the recommendations from the PPLC, have to do with the experience of our students at Jones. We hear what our students are saying. We understand, we respect, and we feel for what they're saying. For whatever reason, things have not gone the way we would like them to. And it's our commitment to make sure that we make Jones into truly a great school, that all students feel like they are welcome, that they are part of the school family. With that in mind, we're looking into ways in which we can orient not only our incoming students and our students of color, but all students toward a better understanding of what it means to be a Jones school citizen. Specifically, we're going to be looking at ways in which our incoming students of color can be appraised of what our school family means and what it is we're accomplishing or trying to accomplish, but making sure that all of our students understand those things. That will give us a more common ground to work from and enable us to be able to respond much more readily to those things that are not appropriate, whether it be something from a student, something inadvertently from a staff member, whatever it might be. So again, that second part is the student part, to help build that sense of student community within Jones. The third part deals with the diversity of our school environment. Our school has been a diverse school environment racially, ethnically, geographically, and socioeconomically for a long time. However, with the changes that took place some years ago in the selective enrollment process, our diversity began to skew somewhat. So that we went from, I'll give you just a bit of background, when I became principal in 2008, our African American student enrollment was at approximately 17 or 18%. Through a tremendous amount of effort in terms of recruitment, visiting schools, reaching out to communities all across Chicago, but especially targeting areas where we were underrepresented, we were eventually able to raise that percentage of enrollment at our school after about 3 or 4 years to about 25% African American. It was at that point that the selection process was changed. Again, it had nothing to do with any decisions made at our school, and that percentage gradually began to decline. That decline took us down to approximately 10 to 11% African American students. This is not representative of the city of Chicago. Our other areas have either increased somewhat, decreased somewhat, but have remained relatively balanced to each other. That would be our white, our Asian American, and our Hispanic American students. Our concern is to try to continue to build the diversity and maintain the diversity of Jones College Prep. And we're developing a number of important strategies, some of which we've been doing, but others are going to be newer ways in which we look at using the tools we have at our disposal to try to increase the diversity of our school population. That's going to be an important part of these processes as well. And the fourth and final portion of the recommendations from the PPLC specifically deal with the trying to increase and improve the diversity of our teaching faculty. This has been a real challenge because we find ourselves, we've had a great deal of growth as a school, but we're now leveling off in terms of change in our school staff. In other words, at this point, we're not adding positions. During the time we were adding positions, we were able to keep and maintain a certain level of diversity within the school population. We need to ratchet up those efforts so that in the coming years, and I'm saying years because this isn't something that will change overnight, we will be able to recruit more people of color, teachers of color, who can better represent the population of our school. The challenge is going to be because, of course, since we're not growing in population, we're not adding teaching positions, but as new positions, new vacancies develop, as people retire, move away, change jobs, that type of thing, that we will be focusing on trying to build and maintain the diversity of our school teaching population, our professional population. Now, those were just the areas that were brought to us by the PPLC that we have been working with the PPLC, and I appreciate all their efforts in that regard. And we're going to continue to work with the PPLC to make sure that we achieve those particular goal areas. However, this is a broader matter, considerably broader than that. There are other areas of concern, and how do we fit those into the building of our goals or building toward our goals? And the best thing we can do is, and what we are doing, is building a framework of priorities. That framework will then serve as the vehicle for how we move forward, not only with these 4 specific recommendations and areas, but in many other areas as well. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Mitchell to step in. Mr. Mitchell is experiencing some power outage issues from last night's storm, and hopefully he'll be able to stay online with us here. But Mr. Mitchell is going to go over the basics of our framework of priorities.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Dr. Robinson, do you have those slides available?
Yep, let me do that.
Thank you. I have a few slides just for visual representation of the information I want to share with you all. The priorities that we're referring to really pertain to shifts in our culture and climate, but the idea of a framework utilizing priorities is something, as Dr. Powers said, we can utilize in a more broader scope. So with that, next slide. These are our priorities for 2021 and beyond. A little context. As Dr. Powers alluded to, we have been listening to all the discourse surrounding the existing school culture and climate. Teachers and students have voiced their concerns and have proposed change. We've used that information to create 3 priorities that we will use to guide our work this school year and beyond. We plan on using the CPS equity framework to guide us through this work of these priorities. And additionally, these priorities that we've developed are tied into our school improvement plan, also known as the CIWP. Next slide. Priority number 1, it states Jones needs to train its staff to better support its students of color. To do this, Jones needs to be invested in training that will build an anti-racist community. Additionally, Jones needs to develop and consistently implement restorative practices. So what we intend to do, as bullet pointed, is we will look to choose a credible outside resource to lead us through, we're looking at monthly PDs with a focus on creating anti-racist communities and eventually get to the point where we're understanding and implementing restorative practices. We also will have this outside resource help us assess our current culture and climate so we can develop a more strategic plan to improve. I didn't list the timeline because we're still working on this. I can tell you that in terms of order of preference, we want to get the assessment done first. So for this school year, we are going to work in earnest to get these things kind of going concurrently. Next slide. Next slide, Dr. Robinson. Thank you. I also might preface that these priority numbers are not in terms of importance. So one is not more important than two, is not more important than three. They're just how they're numerically numbered. Priority number 2, Jones needs to continuously review instructional materials and practice to ensure cultural relevance and how they can connect with our students of color. So what we're looking at doing is we want to start reviewing curriculum per department to see how we can integrate more culturally responsive materials. This work will be done in conjunction with the ILT, and in this process, we should be looking at how we can get student voice involved in this process as well. Additionally, we will, the Jones staff should receive some PD on culturally responsive teaching. So that's on us as administrators to try to find that. So again, these are things that we're going to be looking to accomplish this year. We don't want to over inundate teachers with too much PD. So, you know, whether or not this will be accomplished in totality this year, it's to be determined, especially in light of our virtual environment. Number 3. Our third priority is Jones must improve communications with students. Simply put, our Jones should focus on how we receive student input, and then once we get it, what do we do with that student voice? And so this year, we're looking at revamping our student voice committee, which is a district recognized entity it's built on building relationships with students and adults by creating space and situations in which student input is not only heard but valued. There are opportunities for some level of activism that can be done in conjunction, you know, with administration. So we're really looking at how that committee can be better utilized. We also want to continue to work on our relationships with our various cultural groups to ensure that they have a voice. And lastly, in doing this, we want to continue working on building relationships and trust with students. We know that that's something that's been lost. We've heard that through the conversations and how students have chosen to voice their concerns. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's definitely something that we want to, you know, work on. So in conclusion, last slide, please. So in closing, these priorities were developed with a sense of urgency. However, they will take time to complete. We don't want to rush into this and not get it done right. I think that's one of the mistakes that we've probably learned from, is trying to do something and not seeing it all the way through. So our hope is that the LSC will review these priorities and determine how they can support the school in accomplishing these priorities over time. This is what's known as adaptive change, and it doesn't happen overnight. This is a comprehensive start that lends itself to a high level of transparency. So as we solidify these priorities into a more working framework, we can share what that finished product will look like, you know, soon enough. But we wanted to take this moment tonight just to give you guys an indication of like where we are in this process. I would wish, you know, that we could tell you specifically which outside group we're looking into, but we're trying to narrow that list down, and that's another conversation we want to have with the PPLC. But this hopefully gives a little more insight about what we're trying to do and a frame of how we're doing this, because everything could be considered a priority, but we figured if we kind of categorize it in these 3 things, and it is fermented in the school improvement plan, as well as the district-wide equity framework, which gives us a lens of how to make sure that we are looking at every aspect of this, is really going to be, you know, how this work can be successful. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. Again, as I wrap up this portion here, this is a progress report. We want you to know where we are, what we have been doing, and the directions we're heading at this point. The framework of priorities gives us a vehicle through which we can address a multitude of different issues, maybe in different ways, running along in parallel courses, but all toward those goals that we've talked about. So as we move forward, we will pledge to be able to report on a monthly basis to the LSC, as well as making sure our school community knows the kind of work we're doing. And with the challenges of remote learning and the uncertainty of where we're going with regard to students actually re-entering our school community or re-entering our school buildings, it's going to be important for us to be able to hold to this, move forward in a steady pace, and achieve real lasting change for our school and our school climate and culture. So that concludes our report for this evening. Thank you very much for listening.
Dr. Powers, thank you for your report. I do have, well, first of all, you all mentioned that you all would like the support of the LSC. So of course we are here and willing to support, especially as a lot of the things that you talked about do align with the CWIP. So we are really excited to start to make some progress on those things. And I agree with you. I think the monthly meetings and check-ins will be important. I think also the other thing that we really want to think about as the LSC is how we can help with the budget. So we really need to think about, as you are bringing in a consultant group or something like that, to kind of work with, you know, kind of determining where we are. So we really want to, as you start to kind of narrow things down, we need to start looking at how we need to rearrange things in the budget to make sure this happens, because it is a priority and we definitely want to fund that. Any other comments from the LSC?
I think it also be necessary to attach dollars to different goals along them. If we set up the roadmap as to what they should or should not be doing, and attach the monies with it to ensure that we do accomplish this. And this way, the students as well as the other members of the Jones community can be assured of accomplishing the objectives that have been espoused by the teachers as well as the student and alumni.
Very good point. And also, we're going to be drawing resources from a number of different sources. We have our own internal accounts that we'll be able to do some things with that. We also have a number of discussions we're going to be having with the Friends of Jones and getting resources through that area as well. So it's not all going to come in one place at one time, but spread out over time. I think we can manage the cost. The cost is going to be well worth it. The dollar cost is going to be well worth it if we can achieve the things that we're trying to achieve through this program or through this process.
Dr. Powers, just a question with regard to finances. I know that we see some nice revenues come in from rental, which obviously that is gone. Are there any other efficiencies that we're realizing by not having a building at capacity?
At this particular point, actually, we're actually coming up with more cost, simply because of things like technology that we have to add for remote learning. Right now, we're gathering information and feedback from our teachers in terms of some of the technology needs they're going to have to be very effective with the remote learning plan. So if anything, some of our costs are going up. Unfortunately, as a school budget, we don't gain any advantage from, let's say, less air conditioning or less heating in the winter. That all is absorbed at the CPS level. But I think we are going to see some, we can affect certain changes or certain things that will help us. And the resources, it'll take a little managing, but that's something we've been very effective at over the years. Even during the time when there were massive budget cuts in CPS, we never lost a teaching position. We were always able to protect our teaching positions and make sure that our kids had the teachers that they need. And it's very important that we continue with that commitment. I think we can make this work.
I have a question in regards to what Tim just mentioned of as far as the budget is concerned, and you mentioned, Dr. Powers, about the technology cost. Is it possible to reach out to some of our business partners to see if we can get assistance with actually providing the different services from a technology standpoint, whether it be the administrator, the teachers, or if it be students who need some assistance in that area?
Well, we've been fortunate on the side of the students. CPS has put a tremendous amount of effort and time and money into this process. A lot of our students, their biggest challenge is not the computer device. We have enough Chromebooks, for example, to be able to make sure that any student who needs one can get one. We distributed in the spring about 150, and we still have many more. So that I'm not as concerned about as, for example, their broadband capacity, their ability for Wi-Fi connectivity, that type of thing. And CPS is doing a great deal to identify students who are in those situations and try to get the resources to them. We can certainly tap into or try to tap into additional resources like in the business community. Some of those may be more focused on the instructional side for our staff than the learning side for our students, but they're part of the same process. But that's a very good point.
In the springtime, teachers had a concern, and justifiably so, that the discretionary dollars that they have were not, they weren't allowed to use it towards software purchases. So some had to purchase out of their own pocket. Has that obstacle been removed?
Not yet. No, we're still pushing for that. That was one of the things, as one of the selective enrollment principles, the 11 of us met together with district leadership early last week, and that was one of the things that was mentioned as a concern that we had. Obviously, we were also talking about the remote learning / hybrid model and so forth. That was the main thrust of our conversation. But one of those things we talked about, and we've heard that from our PPLC and our PPC, which is our representatives, our union delegates and so forth, is that can CPS reach an agreement with CTU on having those resources? It's $250 per teacher per year. That can go a long way for some of the software that teachers are wanting to get, and they can tailor that to their instruction. The problem is there's no way to get a reimbursement at this point. So hopefully CPS will be able to reach an agreement and make that change necessary.
Thanks. I know I took us off topic a little bit there. Sorry.
Okay, and I do apologize for my dog who wants to comment as well. The next business in order is the student report. Sanaya?
Hello. Hope everybody's doing good. So I just kind of have two quick things that I wanted to talk about. The first is an emphasis on student health and wellness, specifically mental health during the online school year. I wanted to know, has admin taken any steps to establish mental health assistance or checkups that are unique to online learning? I say this because I know in the past 2 years while I've been here, there's been a lot of emphasis on student mental health in the school building. And obviously we're not in the school building. And I know that time with counselors will obviously be cut down a lot because we're not in person and we can't go see them during our free periods. So I think that admin should really consider, I know there's a lot, going on, especially with the racial equity plan, but maybe talk to the counselors about establishing some avenue where students can, talk about their mental health. Some other ways I see this working out would be advertising advertisements by the administration through like newsletters or like on the Jones website to promote club meetings, and also including this in the weekly check-ins with our ACT Lab / Eagle Labs. Also, how does admin plan to support students through the demanding nature of online learning, where we're looking at being like on the computer for 3 to 6 hours a day? I think obviously that's a lot of time to spend in front of a screen, and impacts, mental health in a way that maybe we haven't experienced yet because we've never had to do school online only. So those are just two things I think we should look at under the mental health of students. Secondly, I want to talk about the survey participation and student voice, which Mr. Mitchell kind of touched on when he talked about the administration gathering student voice on important issues. And looking at the data for the SRO vote, the responses from students were incredibly low. Around like 20% of students responded to the survey. And I know that we can't really do much about stakeholders outside of school, but I think that we can put some extra effort into garnering more student responses for surveys like that, because it's obviously important to know what students think. And we can't, it's harder to make decisions when we're going off such small sample numbers, and we need, true data for that. So yeah, again, we should put in some more effort to try to make some stuff like that happen. That to me can look like a survey completion required in like a class, like participation points or, some other small grade to ensure that we get, student responses for things like that. Because if not, then we're just kind of like making decisions blindly and we don't kind of know what students are actually thinking, so yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Denia, thanks for your report. Communication with regard to, surveys and meetings, I think is improving now. We're getting, we're using social media more. But even the survey from the SRO survey had very low participation rates. So I think that's something that we are definitely working on in terms of making people more aware of what's out there and using different mediums to take care of that. So.
Can
And
I?
if I, oh,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I know last year, or in the last part of the learning session, some teachers were more intent about asking about mental health than others. And I think Denia brings up a really good point. I also am hoping that we're also checking in with our teachers because they've never been asked to teach like this ever. And I would love if somebody would check in on us parents at some point in time too. But as it relates to the students, has there been any guidance that has been given from CPS, or is there any other resources that we could tap into to help provide that support for the teachers, because they're going to have the most contact with our students?
I'm not as familiar right now with the resources available to our teachers in that regard. The focus has been so much on the instructional and learning part of it. With regard to the students, part of what we're trying to do with our own remote learning model this fall is to replicate as much as possible what I would consider to be a quote normal unquote school day in terms with the schedule and the contact between teachers and students. And speaking with the teachers, talking about the trying to plan, for example, a class, the way you would plan that class if everybody were physically present, the different activities, the interaction, the opportunity for students and teachers to communicate with each other, students to communicate among themselves. And part of the schedule also that we're building for the fall and for this first quarter includes opportunities for students to check in with their teachers, ACT Lab and Eagle Lab activities, ACT Lab being on our 8th period and Eagle Labs being on a once a week basis. Even the possibility of virtual club meetings are things we've talked about. And just as importantly, access to the counselors and the services that the counselors provide, both during ACT Lab times and also on the 1 day a week, at this point, the Wednesdays, when we're not doing an A-B schedule, when counselors will have opportunities to meet with students, just as they will also during the ACT Lab times. So we're going to try as much as possible to leverage those times to give students access and also spend our time with our teachers, making sure they're listening to their students, that they're connecting with the room, so to speak, even though it's remotely. We've got a lot of work still ahead of us, but that's going to be extremely important for everybody.
One thing I'd like to ask, Dr. Powers, if the counselors, and I don't know this, but if the counselors are actually trained in mental health and behavior, then you can use the current your computers and Zoom, they actually accomplish this. This is something that we do, and it's actually done in society, which is, of course, that's what we kind of do here at my work. But I think that's a way to actually address that issue regarding the students having mental health, because I agree with her that it's a big ask of the students because they've never experienced this type of learning before. And yes, I agree with her. It is tough. We've seen it actually happen among a lot of students, and this is going K through 12, where they're having difficulties dealing with the lack of socialization and things of that nature. So anything we can do or try and help in that process would be really great. And I think there may be resources that are at our disposal. We just haven't thought about it in this manner.
I think you're correct, and especially some of the well-established resources that we've been used to dealing with on the telephone, in person, and so forth, now have shifted a lot of their operations to these type of virtual or remote communications. And that's something, there's no question about it. Our counselors are very adept at what they do. They've got strong networking with various resources in the community. We want to make the most use we can of those resources.
If we can talk later, and if I can assist in that, we would be able to help out. So.
Thank you, Danaya. The next business in order is the teacher report.
Thanks, Dr. Robinson. I have unmuted Ellen Martinsack and Olivia Guerrero from the PPLC. No, I did, I swear. Trying again.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. Okay, so last week, one of the teacher representatives unexpectedly resigned from their position on the LSC, which has left us with only one teacher representative. The remaining teacher representative has made it clear that they're not interested in participating in the PPLC side of the work. So in order to move forward, we need a teacher representative on the LSC to represent the PPLC. The PPLC and administration were scheduled to meet on August 5th to discuss administration's progress towards addressing the PPLC's racial equity proposals. However, until we have adequate representation on the LSC, we feel uncomfortable offering feedback on administration's work. Due to the structures and procedures of LSC meetings, staff voice is not adequately represented at LSC meetings if we can only speak when called upon. However, our need for representation on the LSC at this time should not put a halt on racial equity work on the part of administration. The PPLC has made it clear that we serve in an advisory capacity. We have identified a problem and offered 4 possible initial steps towards racial equity that can be incorporated into the comprehensive Jones Plan for racial equity. It is clear to the PPLC that the administration does not know what to do in terms of this comprehensive anti-racism plan. So we're willing to provide feedback on administration's comprehensive plan towards racial equity at Jones, but any insinuation that the PPLC is the roadblock to the racial equity plan because we will not provide feedback at this time makes it evident to us that the administration expects PPLC to carry the work forward instead of providing the leadership and guidance the teachers expect from them. We do not want administration to push teachers into doing this labor for them. We gave our 4 proposals to administration on March 4th. Since then, PPLC has convened multiple times. Up until the July 14th LSC listening session, PPLC has had to push for any sort of discussion on this work. It is clear that as of July 14th, administration has felt pressure to act after being called out in a public forum. But since then, we've had to remind administration multiple times that this is their plan to create and implement. Right now, our administration is stressing the urgency of getting our feedback and putting a plan into action. But where was this urgency 6 months ago, 2 years ago? This is not the first time that teachers have brought up a need for racial equity work at Jones, and the current response from administration feels disingenuous. Students and teachers have been asking for this to happen for years, and now they're placing the burden of urgency on us. Our staff racial equity plan was always intended to be a series of first steps. At the last LSC meeting and in the letter to the Jones family, the administration spoke of a comprehensive anti-racism plan. Our 4 proposals are just 4 places to start, but we have not seen movement on other actions. Is this really the core of a vision or plan for racial equity? This is nowhere near comprehensive. For instance, any comprehensive anti-racist plan should address curriculum across all departments, which was a clear ask from the student petition. Although this was referenced in the letter to the Jones family, so far departments have received no guidance or ideas in order to decolonize our curriculum. Their letter claims that administrators are working with departments on this. Instead, this work is being taken on at the behest of a few proactive department chairs and teachers because we feel that this is so vitally important and we want to do better for our students starting now. Many teachers have attended numerous curricular and anti-racist trainings this summer. Some are doing extensive research to strengthen their classrooms and center BIPOC voices in students. But again, this work is being headed up by teachers without guidance from administration as to what clear anti-racist curricular changes should be and without a clear anti-racist vision for our school.
I'm going to continue the PPLC statement. Our staff has not received much communication from administration about this comprehensive anti-racism plan beyond the vague statements made in the letter to the Jones family. Just as our student groups have said that administration has not reached out to them to truly hear their voices, our entire staff has also not been asked directly by administration for input and feedback. It is really important that our entire staff be heard, surveyed, and continuously updated on this plan. On July 31st, the PPLC sent a 3-question survey to the whole staff, asking 1, how satisfied they are with the administration's response to racial equity proposals in general, 2, how satisfied they are with administration's progress on the staff-generated racial equity proposals delivered in March, And 3, how satisfied they are with administration's attempt to determine areas of need with regard to racial equity at JCP. The results of our survey show that approximately 2/3 of the 59 respondents marked very unsatisfied or unsatisfied to each of the 3 questions. The lowest satisfaction rating was associated with a question about administration's progress on the specific racial equity proposals. And the highest satisfaction rating, again, around 1/3, was associated with a question about the administration's attempt to determine areas of need. On July 29th, administration emailed the PPLC 4 documents containing some ideas regarding each of our 4 proposals. We have grave concerns about the work so far. Each document was vague, the goals were unclear, and there is no vision for what a comprehensive anti-racism plan should be. For example, there is no criteria provided for evaluating outside professional development organizations based on any understanding of our training needs, and no specific timelines were given for how we can enact these plans. There's a lot more progress that they need in order to make an actually comprehensive anti-racism plan for our school. Administration may say that they are making a good faith effort to do everything that the teachers have asked for. However, our 4 proposals were not intended to be a checklist and were not intended to solve problems of racism at Jones. If the overall intent is for Jones to become an anti-racist institution, we need more than a checklist. Using the first 2 weeks of school to do whole school anti-racism work. What are we doing? If it seems like we're being pushy, we are. If it seems like our expectations are high, they are. We are angry. We expect more out of our administration to do what is right and just. We hold ourselves and our school to high standards in everything we do. So why are we not doing the same when it comes to racial equity?
Dr. Robinson, may I respond?
You can, but I just wanted to speak to the one, can you hear me? Okay, I just wanted to speak to the one point about filling the teacher rep, because I just want that part to be clarified. I'm the chairperson, obviously new chairperson, and so I received the note that we would be losing the one teacher representative. And I obviously tried to reach out to the teacher representative to see if we might be able to change his mind. And unfortunately, we were unable to do that. And so then the next person that I reached out to was the local school council relations person to understand about how we could fill that space, because I was very concerned about not having a full roster of people, and really wanted to have that voice of a teacher. So this is where the pandemic becomes a problem. I was told that because of the fact that we are not in person, the teacher space cannot be filled until we have an in-person vote. And then that in-person vote then has to go to the board for approval. So while we were able to fill spots for the community and for the parents without much difficulty, the teacher spot is very precious. It is a very important, space. And so again, that's why I think it's really important to preserve the teachers that we have and their voice. And, we really do think that all of the teachers have a very important voice. And so, I really want to continue to invite you, Olivia and Ellen, to really continue, even if you are not an appointed person on the LSC, to feel like you are welcome to really be able to voice what's going on. And we are here to be helpful in trying to guide towards change. We are really trying to, work towards getting some consultants in there, because I understand that sometimes when there are deep-seated issues, it's better to have an objective voice to really be able to get there and get to the deep down issues. And so I want you to know that just because you don't have a voting person on the LSC, we are still here. We are still listening. I am here. I am listening. I am willing to help out. And I think that the other members of the LSC would agree. And then when the timing is better and, we are able to, not be in a pandemic, then we will, just as quickly as we can fill that spot. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. I hope you feel the support.
I'd like to just say a couple of things with regard to, and I appreciate Olivia and Ellen's feedback on this. We met as a group, the administrative team and the PPLC last week. And of course, one of the major topics of discussion was the representative for the PPLC, the teacher representative on the LSC. I urged the PPLC at that time to continue with our discussions because the purpose of our meeting was for the PPLC to provide us with feedback on the proposals we'd put forward, or the progress report, I guess we might say, interim report that we put forward. And again, we got that to them a week prior to that, so about 2 weeks ago now. Because of their concern with regard to not having the full representation on the LSC, at that time, the PPLC declined to provide us with any additional feedback. Again, I strongly urge them that we would do just as Dr. Robinson just said, would make sure that the PPLC members, the teacher members that are in attendance at LSC meetings did have a voice and did have an opportunity. And because there's no actual vote on this plan, that a representative, a missing representative, I guess you might say, on the LSC doesn't stop us from continuing our conversations and receiving the feedback. So we welcome the feedback from the PPLC. That's why we met last week, was to do that, so we could begin tightening up the program, start identifying more specific things as we move forward. This is a very challenging thing. There's reference to this originally, or the recommendations being originally presented to us in March. That is correct. That was immediately before we shut down for the pandemic. We did say we would get back together again after the end of the school year, and we did in July, although again, it took a while for us to finish the school year. We had a lot of challenges during that time. This was never off of our radar. Once we were able during the summer to get together, to start discussions with the PPLC and to begin making sure that we were moving in the right direction, the administrative team has been moving forward. We fully accept that the role of the PPLC is advisory. And we're not attempting to push work back on the PPLC or back on the teachers. Quite the contrary, we value their input and would like to get their feedback on the plans that we have developed so far. We are in early stages. There's no question about it. I know another school or other schools might be further along in the process than we are. But we want to do this right. We want to do it so it's lasting. And that's going to be a very important factor for all of us, as Mr. Mitchell alluded to earlier. So at this particular time, my invitation is there to the PPLC to schedule a time when we could have some feedback and some discussion, as we had hoped to be able to do last week. So again, the lines of communication are open. Please reach out to us and let us know when we can start talking.
Hey, Ellen, question for you real quick. I mentioned before, we've had a hard time with responses to surveys and so forth. What was the participation rate for the staff survey that you'd sent out?
As I stated in the statement, there were 59 respondents.
Okay.
Over the week. So far higher response rate than the SRO survey that was sent.
Yeah, that's just teachers, right? So that's more than 50%.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
Can I ask a quick question? Is the PPLC guaranteed a spot on the LSC, or it's just any like multiple teacher? I was confused because the individual happened to be part of the PPLC, but any teacher can run. They're not guaranteed a spot, right?
I'd like to be able to clarify what the PPLC kind of is.
Sorry, I was confused about that.
No worries. I mean, similar to how Veronica was clarifying the roles of the LSC at the beginning of the meeting, for the PPLC, the 2 elected teacher representatives on the LSC are by default on the PPLC. Additionally, there are 7 additional elected members of the PPLC. So at this time, 2 years ago when the most recent LSC election occurred, the PPLC was not a body that was active at Jones. So when candidates ran for the LSC, they were unaware, I believe, that that was part of the responsibility of being a teacher representative on the LSC, is to be that liaison and that voice for teachers on the LSC. And I hear from the LSC that they welcome our input, and I appreciate that you are listening to our reports, you are listening for that staff voice. I think that's essential. I think as parents, you want to know what teachers are saying. You don't go to school with your kids, although I guess now you can like hover over their shoulders because there's a screen, which is a little weird too. But I think the very fact that I can't unmute myself is a testament to the equity of voice concerns that the PPLC is raising. The fact that we are only able to respond when directly questioned is not going to give us that equity of voice that is needed to fully represent teachers on the LSC. And I understand that currently there are no votes associated with the racial equity proposals or the administration's plan for anti-racism at our school. That being said, as Dr. Robinson mentioned earlier, budget is going to be a concern here. And that is something that the LSC votes on. And if there is no teacher representative who is in communication with the PPLC and in the development of advising those plans, we are missing that voice. As somebody, a member of the PPLC who is running for LSC in the fall, I would really like to see an effort made to see what this could look like in a virtual space. There are already amendments to the Illinois School Code regarding the LSC election that moved it from April to November and are working on allowing it to happen in a virtual space rather than in person because there's a pandemic. That should also be taken into consideration in this situation. I absolutely agree that the teacher position on the LSC is extraordinarily valuable. All LSC members have their own unique perspectives, but without that balance, I think the LSC is lacking. And I would appreciate a good faith effort to figure out what that virtual option looks like, given that that is already going to happen for the election in November.
Is it possible
I'm happy to look. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, Ellen, I'm happy to look more into it. Those were the answers that I was given from the Office of LSC Relations. So, you know, I will be happy to reach back out to them again and see if there is some sort of accommodation that can be made because of this case. I hear you.
Is it possible to speak with the teacher who resigned and ask him to remain in place until a replacement can be found?
I believe Dr. Robinson already did that. And members of the PPLC have also approached him.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Olivia and Ellen. The next, oh, is there more? Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Just, please keep coming. And I'm sorry I was slow to unmute you. I see now I could have, and we would all just quickly get your voice heard. If you don't come, we would get even further behind in what we're trying to move forward with. So I love seeing you guys here, so please come. That's all.
I second that. Okay, so again, thank you, Olivia and Ellen. Thank you for your voices, and we look to hear from you again next month, okay? And so the next business in order is the principal's report. So Dr. Powers, you're on again.
Just very briefly, the biggest thrust we have right now is getting ready for the start of school. Last Wednesday, after weeks of discussion and lots of feedback from people across the entire district, CPS gave the go-ahead for fully remote instruction. While it is not what we want to start the school year, the hybrid model that was being proposed for high schools would have been not only difficult, but damaging, quite frankly, to our kids' education. The typical Jones freshman and sophomore is in, the majority of them are in multi-grade level classes. So it would have called into question the status of freshmen and sophomores in AP classes, in language classes above the first year level or second year level, and math significantly, because approximately 40 to 50% of our math freshman math students are in basically sophomore level math, are accelerated, and some more beyond that as well. So the model for hybrid was not set up to take those kinds of things into consideration. It also did not address effectively what I'd call broadly elective areas, the fine arts, for example. And we have a number of major sub-programs. We have the CTE program. We have 2 different CTE programs. So trying to get students into like schedules to be in the pods that were being described would have been difficult and would almost inevitably led to fewer choices for the students. What we're trying to do right now is to create a schedule that as close as possible mimics our regular AD schedule, providing for the additional time, such as Denia was talking about earlier, with regard to access to access to counselors, possible student clubs and organizations, things of that sort. The additional challenge is, however, and I think we were getting pretty excited about this plan, but now we have the additional challenge of how do we then make the transition back to what was more likely to be a hybrid program. In other words, what we're planning right now would make a almost seamless return to regular attendance, regular AB scheduled full-time attendance. But we're likely to have a hybrid model somewhere in between. So we're looking at those challenges now, how we can make our remote model hybrid ready for whenever that might be. And that is something which, believe it or not, we only received last night some additional guidance on what some of our planning needs to be. That will be on our agenda from this point forward. I'll be reporting back at the September meeting, not only on the work of our racial equity and restorative justice comprehensive plan, but also the status of where we are with regard to planning for the next phase. A lot has to be done in the next couple of weeks before school starts on September the 8th. That's really about it. These are ongoing things, and we'll be coming back to periodically. As we know more, we'll communicate more out to our Jones community as well.
Any comments from the LSC? Okay. Just of note, we have, there have been a number of presentations this evening, and also we had last week as well. And you should be able to find those on the LSC website. But additional to that, Jesus Ayala has been able to really be able to create links into the specific reports. So like the PowerPoints and things like that that you're seeing this evening, when he posts those minutes, you'll be able to find them. So I really do thank Jesus for all of his work. And now we're able to move over to the public participation portion of this. And I do refer you again to those rules that we'll be kind and respectful, and we'll all be listening, and we will give you your 2 minutes to speak, and but also understand that there are others waiting to speak. So I will refer this to Jesus so that he can start to let people in to have conversation.
All right, good evening. Thank you so much, Chair Robinson. I've received a couple requests to speak. I put the form back in the chat in case anybody wanted to sign up. But as of now, I have 6 requests. I will call them in the order they were received. I'll try to call 2 at a time to have the speaker and speaker on deck so we can move accordingly. I'm going to rely on both the chair and Lainey to give me some time markers so we can keep people within the 2-minute mark, please, just to allow for a diversity of speakers. But I'll start in order. I have Daniel Andrade signed up first and Cassie Cresswell on deck. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Daniel. You may speak when you're ready, Daniel.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep, thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Daniel Andrade, and I'm a rising junior at Jones. First, I would like to say about the special report from the principal. I'm very excited to see that, and I'm very hopeful to hear that about the third-party organization. I think that's very important to develop a non-racist school. And as Dr. Powers and Mr. Mitchell both said, this is going to take years. It's not going to happen overnight. But in those years, I hope that this isn't forgotten. It seems like this isn't the first time this racial development has happened at Jones. And I just wish that this is not again forgotten and that we continue to keep pushing for this. Now moving on to my comments about the SROs. The vote is going to be held after this. I just wanted to point out an issue I found with it. Last LSC meeting, we had the Chief of Security and Safety, Ms. Jadine Chow, come and gave us a little presentation, which I found very informative. But she's pointed out a thing about the SROs and the community, that they're supposed to have a strong relationship between them, and I just don't see that happening. On her little PowerPoint on primary roles and responsibilities of SROs, bullet point number 2 was build positive student relationships. And again, I'm just not seeing that happening. In that report that you guys, that was talked about earlier about at Jones, majority of it was students, and I ran the numbers. It was only 14% of students at Jones, average, so that's not high again. And I heard today a lot about getting student voices heard, and I think that's very important. I'm very hopeful to see that again. But as it was pointed out, I want to go to question 5 real quick. It's our schools, SROs have worked to build relationships with the students at our school. And it's the majority said they strongly disagree. I was very sad to see that. And again, I'm also not seeing it. And majority of those who said that they strongly disagree were students. And then the minority said that they strongly agree, 44 respondents, and majority of those were admins and parents. So if they are building positive relationships, it's not with who they should be, is from what I'm seeing. And I think that they need to focus on building relationships with students. And that's question 9. Again, it's given the experience, are you likely to say that we should keep the SROs? And 92 said that they were highly unlikely, and majority of those were students, and 82 that said that they were highly likely, and majority of those were admins and teachers. And so I see this clear divide of students saying that we shouldn't keep them, and admin and teachers saying that we should keep them. And I just want to say today that admin, I hope you reach across and see our viewpoint, that these officers are frankly scared to have in a school. And as we reach across and see your viewpoint, that the SROs do help us. In the PowerPoint, it pointed out that we are in the heart of downtown. There are many incidents that happen there, but I don't think it's fair to cherry pick that we should keep them just because of that. We also have to see the relationships they have with students. But yes, thank you again for my time. And I just want to say I have some ideas. Maybe have the SROs go from classroom to classroom during ACT labs and introduce themselves, or something. I don't know the logistics between their duties, but something similar of that sort, but very focused on relationship building.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you for your comment. And I have to say, we hear you, okay? You're telling me that there are not strong relationships between students and the SROs. I hear that. That's obviously not what they have said that this program was intended to do. So definitely are hearing that. And I definitely hear what you're saying about the surveys. No matter how many surveys we've done, we can't get enough participation. I think it's very much like in real life, right? Where like we're voting and we're getting ready for an election and we can only get 30 to 50% of people to turn out. So I hope that you continue to stay engaged, not only in this process here, but in all processes where you want to have your voice heard. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thanks, and I apologize. I didn't mean to mute you, Daniel. I have Cassie on for next and Edmund Long on deck for after Cassie, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm also going to try to give the verbal 2-minute mark. Sorry, I know Lainey's giving us the visual cue, so I'll try to give you the 2-minute mark verbally. But you're good to go, Cassie, whenever you are.
Hi, I'm Cassie Cresswell. I'm a Jones parent. I sent a letter today on behalf of a bunch of parents. Another parent, I think, is going to speak about this later in the public participation. But one of the things we said in the letter is that we really want, we're calling on the administration and the LSC to fulfill the demands that students made in the petition that was circulated last month. One of those demands was to end the use of SROs at Jones. And we really urge the LSC to vote to remove SROs from Jones. There's no evidence that police officers in schools improve safety. There is evidence that they harm the educational environment for Black and Brown students and students with disabilities. In addition, there are no protections for data collected on students by SROs in student or federal privacy law. This poses huge issues, or safety issues for students, particularly undocumented students, but also really any student who could be added to databases held by the CPD, that's the Chicago Police Department, without their or their parents' knowledge. And there's really no way for you to ask to examine that data or correct that data, which is different from data that's normally collected in school. And that really differs also from a school security guard who's not covered by those same exceptions that are made for law enforcement agents that work in school. And so this is something that's not brought up very much, but at the previous meeting, Jadine Chow did confirm that CPS cannot guarantee that children are not being put into the gang database via SROs, and that's a huge issue. Finally, not on the SRO vote, I really urge all LSC members to look closely at the Open Meetings Act to ensure that this body is fulfilling not just the letter of the act, but the spirit. You're elected officials and you're serving on a public body. Your duty is to make sure that your actions and deliberations are conducted openly. This is all the more important as the school community works through the harms and injustice that have been committed here. It's very tempting to try to keep things quiet and secret and hope things go away, but that is not the way that change is going to happen. And if you can't admit that things are happening and you can't have public discussions, it's really a problem. And so to that end, I really encourage the LSC to actually email all parents and all stakeholders about the LSC meetings. I think we can see by the number of participants in this meeting, fewer than 90 compared to the one on July 14th, where the email went out universally and there was more than 240 participants. That's a big deal. And I think, making sure that the agenda and the notice for the meeting goes out with 48 hours notice, and also really as widely spread as possible, particularly with emailing all parents, would go long to really including the school community and making sure people are aware that these things are happening. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have Edmund Long next and Julie Dorkin after him. I apologize, I think we lost our timekeeper, so I'm gonna set a timer myself as well. So Edmund, you should be good to go whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Edmund Leong, and I am a rising junior at Jones College Prep. We learned about gratitude and humility, that so many people had a hand in our success, from the teachers who inspire us to the janitors who keep our school clean. And we were taught to value everyone's contribution and treat everyone with respect. Those are the values that I and over 2,500 other Eagles are trying to pass on to all generations. That is who we are. Coming into this vote, over 2,500 Eagles are counting on you, the appointed LSC members, to do what is in the best interest of our community. The vote you make will impact the lives of up-and-coming scholars. I only request you come into this vote eyes wide open with your best conscience, because today, I know from experience that if I truly want to leave a better world for myself and my family, and all of our families, if we want to give all our generations and future generations a foundation for their dreams and opportunities worthy of their promise, we want to give them that sense of limitless possibility, that belief that here in America, there's always something better out there if you're willing to work for it, then we must work like never before. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I wish all of you and your families the best. I yield back my time.
Thank you so much, Edmund. As I said, we have Julie Dorkin next and Trinity Lee after. So Julie, you should be good to go when you're ready.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Julie Dworkin. I'm a Jones parent. And as Cassie mentioned earlier, 33 parents signed onto a letter today. Cassie just put the URL in the chat. It's bit.ly/Jones parent letter. The letter was to the LSC and to the members of the Jones administration. And it's calling on the LSC and the administration to fulfill the demands that were in the petition that students put online in July. So really the impetus behind this letter was to stand in support of students who were calling for change to address the racial injustice and racial equity issues at the school. And we want to support those demands. And so we're calling on the LSC and the administration to meet all of those demands. We do appreciate the measures that were laid out tonight to start taking on this work, but it certainly does not meet all the demands, including the elimination of the SROs. And we feel that it's very important to have a public timeline associated with addressing the demands. So we're also calling for that. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I'm just going to read an excerpt from it. We hear and utter to ourselves again and again that Jones is a good school, even a great school. The most fundamental criterion on which to judge the greatness of a school is whether every single student feels welcome, nurtured, and valued. Students cannot learn when they feel threatened, anxious, on edge, and powerless. A school that does not provide a safe and encouraging educational environment for Black and Brown students, where students and staff inflict trauma on Black and Brown students, where students' culture and heritage are not a central component of curriculum, and which sends white students out into the world having learned to wield their race and class status as a weapon against others, is not a good school. It's a school that's failing all the students. In order to make Jones a truly great school, our school community must reckon with the systemic racism that has shaped the educational experience of every student who has come through its doors. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, we have Trinity Lee next and Roberto Nivat after. So Trinity, you are good to go when you are ready.
Hi, my name is Trinity. I'm a rising senior at Jones College Prep. I know everyone else has already spoken about their thoughts on SROs, so I'm not going to elaborate on that anymore. I do want to bring up something that I think should be implemented into the school's anti-racism plan, and that is we need to amend the disciplinary actions that we take against students who have been reported for continued racist behavior or repeated microaggressions. I think that right now, a lot of students have reported that they have been targeted for these racist acts, and the perpetuators have only gotten in-school suspensions or a slap on the wrist. And so we need to address those injustices and make sure that they're being punished. Otherwise, they will just continue happening no matter how much you increase diversity or no matter how many times you tell students that, oh, you can report racism here. I think what this needs is restorative justice, which was mentioned earlier, but I didn't see exactly how it was going to be implemented towards students. I think that a nonprofit organization called Alternatives Youth that has worked with CPS schools before and has trained over 10,000 CPS students in restorative justice would be helpful here, and we could definitely enlist their services. They have proven to be effective, and I think this would be an effective way to properly discipline students who think that it's okay to say the N-word or to do these racist acts or to commit microaggressions time and time again. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. As I mentioned, we have Roberto next, and after we have Jacqueline Smith. Roberto, you should be good to go when you're ready.
Hello, I just wanted to make sure everybody can hear me. Yes, excellent. So my name is Roberto Manjavar. I have a daughter who will be a sophomore this year. I want to first just thank the LSC, the entire LSC. This is incredibly hard work, and it is hard work, and you must continue this work, this commitment to racial equity, to justice, to providing a supportive, nurturing, challenging experience, high school experience for all our students, specifically our Black, Brown, and students of color. They have been disenfranchised for such a long time in this country. And these issues are not new to Jones, it sounds like. We are new to the Jones community, to the Jones family. But it sounds that this has been percolating for years. And it is time for the Jones administrations, the teachers, the staff, the parents, the students to really make Jones that shining beacon for all our students. The PPLC has to play an important role in this racial equity. And it seems like they have been pushing and they have been wanting this, not because for themselves, but for the students that they teach, the students that are in their classrooms. And we do, as parents, as a parent, we do want to know what is happening in the class, in our classes, in our classrooms, with our peers. It is more than just bringing anti-racism programs into the schools. It's about building curriculum that shares all of the contributions that every culture, ethnicity brings to this country. And that is important. You know, my daughter was fortunate to have some amazing teachers who look just like her. The curriculum that, it's obvious that Jones provides a rigorous curriculum. But I noticed that Miss Olivia Guerrero is on, and she reached out to my daughter. She recommended books that talked about the Latinx experience. These cultural are important for our students to see it within the curriculum. We must share these things. We must build it. We must foster it. We must nurture it. We must build it. It is incredibly important. And I know this is hard work, and it has been hard work for everyone. And I truly do appreciate that you've given me this platform. You've given everyone this platform to really express their concerns, share their experiences. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roberto. As I said, we have Jacqueline Smith next, and then the last request I received was from Sunny Elmer. So Sunny on deck, Jacqueline next. And you should be good to go, Jacqueline, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for giving me the time to speak. I am the parent of a rising freshman. I am also a professional school counselor at another CPS high school. And I would like to express my opinion about removing SROs from Jones College Prep. As a parent and educator, I firmly believe that if you see and value students as they are and work towards building authentic and meaningful relationships that communicate your genuine interest and investment in your students, particularly including your Black and Brown students, there will be no need for SROs on campus. I know that there are teachers on board who are advocating for this shift in school culture, and I'm hoping that the LSC makes decisions that align with student and parent voices. I'm hopeful that as schools move towards eliminating SROs, funds will eventually be allocated for things like mental health services and supports, which often address the root of what's considered problematic or disruptive behaviors, as trauma is often linked with things like anger, aggression, and drug use. As a counselor myself, I know we don't always have the capacity to fully address our student needs because we're pulled in so many directions. So with additional funding, I'm hopeful that student needs can be met. I also believe that if Jones is moving in the direction of restorative practices, SRO presence is exactly the opposite of that. I listened to a gentleman a few weeks ago in the LSC meeting, I believe it was a security guard, talk about the importance of having officers on campus to help with external issues given the location of the school. And I hear that, but I'm also wondering if there's a way to have police presence stationed externally to support those external issues while relying on the Jones school staff to support the internal issues. SROs in schools, while intended to keep students safe, traditionally have acted as key players in criminalizing our students, furthering the school to prison pipeline, which disproportionately impacts our Black and Brown youth. As a parent of a rising freshman, I'm hopeful that Jones will be the next school to take a stand against police presence in our schools. Thank you so much for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you. As I mentioned, the last request to speak through the forum came from Sunny Elmer. Sunny, you're ready to go whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Sunny Eimer, and I'm a recent Jones alum. I wanted to first just address the anti-racist action plan that was read by Dr. Powers earlier. I agree with the PPLC that this needs to be fleshed out more. I don't think that it's really acceptable that this is the extent of what we've been given to work with, given how many requests for change there have been over the years. I also want to ask if it's possible to think about accountability for teachers who have been mentioned in testimonials of having repeated incidences of racist violence against students, and also if there's a way to incorporate a streamlined avenue for students to report racist violence and then receive support from counselors and other folks in the school community who could support them. In terms of SROs, I want to echo what Cassie Cresswell and others on this call have said, that there is no evidence that SROs make students any safer, but there is concrete evidence that they do make BIPOC students unsafe and trade off with resources that do directly impact student safety, such as counseling and physical health services. Also, there's been mention of restorative justice, but I want to note that restorative justice means that we need to be disinvesting in carceral solutions that disproportionately impact Black and Brown individuals who also, when we have police in schools, they are not building positive relationships with students. If many Black and Brown students in particular have traumatic histories with police, I think this past summer has made it very clear that we are constantly seeing instances of police brutality that build this accumulated trauma with BIPOC students towards police. So I think that if we're talking about building a safer climate for BIPOC students, it's an imperative that eliminating SRO presence is the first and foremost consideration. Also, given that there was very low student participation in the SRO survey, I think it's reasonable to defer to the demands that have been made on this call during the public participation segment, and also the fact that over 2,700 members of the Jones community have explicitly called for SROs to be removed from Jones as the first and foremost step of an anti-racist systemic change plan. And given that the LSC is supposed to be representative of the Jones community, it's essential that they listen to what the Jones community is calling for and heed these demands. As well, there's national and local precedent for divorcing police from schools. I'll also note that the biggest high school in Chicago just yesterday, Lane Tech, voted to remove SROs, and that's an incredibly important precedent, and I think it should shape how we think about the feasibility of this and the possibilities for reimagining what school safety can look like and what it would mean to eliminate the presence of police and how we can reallocate resources to actually support BIPOC students beyond punitive measures. With that, thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you so much, Sunny. That is all I had in terms of speakers. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat again the form just in case anybody wants to write a statement and submit that, and also my email in case anybody wants to submit a written statement. But that will conclude the public participation. I appreciate everyone staying within, generally within the time frame, and I will yield, refer back to the chair.
Okay. At this point, I want to welcome the LSC members to have comment at this time on the SRO issue.
I'd like to add something here very important in our discussion. First of all, I want to thank everyone who participated in the public input here. People obviously have very strong feelings about these things, and it's something that we take very seriously. I want to emphasize something that's very, very important about the SROs at Jones. They are essentially outward looking. Their role is to protect the students, to protect the faculty and staff members, anyone else in the building, from the environment in which our school is located. We, as I've mentioned before, we have no buffers around our school. The role of the SROs at Jones have been non-disciplinary. Discipline is handled by the school administration. And it's something, of course, we're talking a great deal about, especially with restorative practices. One of the things that I would like to propose as we move forward, and whether we accept the continuation of the SRO program at Jones, or whether we decide not to go ahead with it, as Dr. Robinson outlined earlier, I would like to see us create a student safety or a safety and security committee made up of students and staff members and parents who could then, either working with or without the SRO presence in the school or as part of the school, develop plans that will help do everything we can to keep everyone on our campus safe. That's our vital importance. It's a number one thing. Just as a reminder, a few years ago, we were talking a great deal about safety and security at school because of the terrible school shooting incidents that had taken place. And several of those are are very high profile. We even had a student demonstration which we helped to organize, stressing that sort of thing. Well, one of the things that was part of the discussion, in addition to discussing the overall issues that lead to mental health issues and whatever it is, was the actual physical security of the school and the students and the staff members in the school. So we're very mindful of that. In my first principalship, going back many years, is when Columbine took place, the first incident of its kind to reach that kind of national prominence. So I've always taken the safety and security of our students very, very seriously, and I do believe that with a safety and security plan in place, with a committee that can assist with that, we can continue to move in that direction. I personally support the SRO program simply because I've seen the value and I've seen the reality of our school and our school's location. Thank you.
Veronica, this is Tim. I'd like to address a couple of items during our public forum here. First of all, I want to recognize Roberto Menjivar for continuing to join us in these meetings. Roberto's been coming since his daughter started her freshman year just last year, and I appreciate his input and I appreciate seeing him at different events as well. Jacqueline, one thing that you brought up, Jacqueline Smith, really resonates with me because I had a call last Thursday night with the Commander Alderton of the 1st District, and I asked him that very same question that you brought up, Jacqueline, with regard to having some dedicated resource in beat 123. That is 0123 is our beat around Jones, believe it or not, easy to remember. Having some of those beat officers dedicated to our premises. And he did say he could get people there in the morning, get officers there in the morning to check in with Dr. Powers, check in with admin. But after that, the officers are, dispersed out on various calls, and there's no commitment to being around not only throughout the day, but also at the end of the day when obviously things get a lot busier. So that goes kind of hand in hand with what Dr. Powers was saying, is no matter what the fate of SROs is, we want to have a security and safety committee that comprises everybody, because like many other instances, we may need to have a block club. We may need to have some grassroots organization from Jones. It's a combination of students, parents, community members that can help in these efforts. And oftentimes it's about presence. And it harkens me back to my days as a patrol boy, crossing guard, in grade school. Those are gone, but maybe we need to reinstate something like that. But I appreciate the input that we've got from everybody. And, we're beating on plenty of doors, not only Alderman and the commander, but plenty of others. So that's all I wanted to add here.
I have a question. In hearing all of the different comments regarding SRO, the one thing that stands out to me is looking at the facts, the evidence. It would be great to hear from the student representative or from Ellen as to really what have the BIPOC students experienced, because when we look at the data, we just don't see it. At Jones, I understand what's happening on a national basis, and I am 100% behind that. But when I look at Jones, I don't see it. I don't see the experience that students are saying that they're being discriminated against by the SRO. I understand that students are having issues with teachers, and I think that should be fully addressed. I understand that there's students that are doing microaggressions. I think that should be fully addressed. I just haven't seen the data stated that the SRO are creating that particular problem. At Jones, be very specific. We're gonna have to rule out what's happening on a national basis. We're gonna have to look specifically at Jones to understand what is the best decision. Because myself, I have a child that's there, and I do want to make sure my child is safe, as well as the other 2,100 students that are there. So now, if the students are being discriminated against, hit on, or done something like that, I think that's something that can be addressed in a different manner than doing away with the safety aspect. But if Ellen or someone else that can speak to it, that would be helpful for me.
Sorry. So when we first started looking at the SRO issue, I felt that exact same way. Like, the data is not Jones specific. We don't really see anything that's Jones specific that shows that SROs are abusing their power or anything like that. But I think that as a Black student and as a Black girl who grew up in Inglewood, I understand fully that police presence, whether it be, physically violent or, whatever, still puts students of color on edge, right? And I understand that we're saying there's no evidence for SROs abusing power, but there is no evidence that I have seen that shows that our SROs are doing an exceptional job at this like outward reaching thing that we're talking about, right? Like the problems that they solve on like the CTA and things like that. A lot of things I'm seeing are like, oh, well, they're able to solve problems maybe if something happens on the CTA, but like something that the chief of security said last meeting, we need to decide whether the problems that happen at Jones are things we can wait a few extra seconds for, meaning if we had to call 911, or whether it's something that we need right now. And I don't think that there's, at least that I've seen, anything that's shown that SROs are special to that, right? That, sorry for background noise, but that SROs have done anything that shows overwhelmingly that we need them, right? And I think that if we can instate the rest of these things that, we're talking about, like, crossing guards on duty, or, this, security council that Dr. Powers was talking about, I think that those are very real alternatives that will work as opposed to SROs, because, yeah, like I said before, there's nothing that shows that they are exceptionally helpful either.
Okay, can we unmute Ellen so she can speak, please?
I think Danae is far more qualified than I am to speak to this issue as a student of color at Jones. I would like to bring up what she mentioned earlier in her student statement about survey response rates. Looking at the SRO survey results, all responses from, let me look up all of the roles. Admins, teachers, LSC members, parents, and students put together gave us a grand total of 344 responses. That's less than one grade level class at Jones. So I think one concern that I have is allowing that survey with such a limited sample size to really dictate much of anything. When we spoke with Dr. Powers as PPLC on Wednesday of this past week, he mentioned that there was a movement to postpone the SRO vote. Is that something that had been brought up to the LSC? Thank you, Jen.
I can speak to that, right? So this LSC has been the most stressful thing in my life right now, okay? I am working on this 5 to 6 hours a day. I am talking to everyone I can think of because I cannot have the thought of having my child there. He called me last year when they had that active shooter drill in tears. If there was actually an active shooter, I don't know what I would do. And I told you all before, like, I cannot put other people's children at risk. I am so scared to death over this. As a parent, it hurts my heart. And I understand that I heard Daniel, I heard Denia, I heard them say that they do not have good relations with the police, and I don't frankly know that I do either. But I just need to feel like if I needed to call, that they would be there for my child, for all the parents' children out there, and I don't know everything about this. And so when I'm listening to Dr. Powers tell me that he wants to come up with a group to investigate this, maybe it's possible to investigate it while the kids are not there. Because we have 3 months when they're not going to be there. Is that possible to get that work done, to develop a plan? Because I was told by Jadine Chow that this is effective immediately, which means that if we don't get a plan in place for our children, when they step foot back in that door, there will be no one there. And Tim said that they will try, the police will try, but they haven't given us any concrete information on what they are actually going to do. And so my thing is can we listen to what this plan is that Dr. Powers is saying? I'd like to get a little bit more information, because maybe in the 3 months we can get a plan together. Maybe we don't need the SROs. Maybe that would be the case, right? Like, so in 3 months we would say, we investigated this, and indeed, we do not need SROs because we already have in place this. But for me,
I haven't slept, like I'm jittery, like I'm really scared. And so I need someone to explain to me how I'm going to make my child, your child, safe. I'm sorry.
Am I able to speak? Can I say something, or go ahead, Ellen, and then I'll talk. It's Marge. I've been
Marge, I think Marge was first.
Marge, you can talk too.
Thank you. Being part of the security team at Jones for the last 6 years and being at the front desk after school, I do see a lot that goes on. We do have several schools downtown that are not CPS schools, they're charter schools, that we do come in contact with students that come past the school that we might need assistance with the SRO. That's my main concern, because we have all the staff or the security outside, a few in the building. And if somebody would come in at that time, the SROs do have our radio and we're able to talk to them. And if they need help and they need backup, they're able to get the support that we need immediately, not going through the 911 center and let them dispatch it to the district, and then the district dispatches it. So I think it is very important with the SRO, unless we have another safety plan in place at that time. Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to say a couple things. One is, I don't know if anyone else has ever called 911 and then waited for someone to show up. It's a couple long minutes, and you're so thankful when they come. But if we had someone that had a real-time communication with the city of Chicago, I think that's a very helpful thing for our school. That's one thing. Another is, my child had been at the school for 4 years, and he was there during a lockdown. And after you receive a text from your child hiding in a closet with a few other students, one of them hyperventilating, you just can't get that out of your mind. And it's just so frightening. I don't want anyone to be in the position that there isn't someone on the spot that could possibly offer some help. And that person right now, we're told that we would get 2 hand-picked members that would have real-time lines of communication with the city of Chicago. They supposedly, and they better have, de-escalation training with teenagers, and their main job is the safety of the 2,000 students, 13 to 18-year-olds, and the administration. And if they don't do their job, we should kick them out. If they are in some way inappropriate, we would know. And maybe we could have a little on every agenda, or maybe every other, as we get used to them, put it out there and talk about what's happened in the last month or last. That having 2 full-time employees is a valuable thing, and I think we should think carefully before we give that up. And I do hear the demands, and all these people, 89 people listening in, don't leave us, come back. Don't just come here waiting to hear on this vote. Watch us and help the school be better. And I hear it's taken, people are coming back from being here from 2009. Just keep coming back and keep in touch. And I think we can all make it a better place to be. And I think it's also, I hear it's many people have good experiences now, but I think it could be better. That's all I have for now.
Thanks, Marva. I would just like to chime in. I understand that I am not on the LSC, but I was continuing a thought process that Mr. Robinson had brought up earlier. I would just like to reinforce that, like, if the LSC is looking for student voices, they need to do that very intentionally and not rely upon CPS communication in that survey that was sent. I received that survey, several of my colleagues did not as teachers. So that survey was not broadly received, which is why we have only 344 respondents across so many stakeholders. So I would urge the LSC to separately survey and do that work to actually hear from our students, as well as to actually hear from our teachers. I know Mr. Pickett had sent a survey to the teacher body, like requesting our input on the SRO issue, but this is not new. You did an SRO vote last year. Like if we have this security plan that Dr. Powers had mentioned with different stakeholders coming together, this is the first I've heard of it tonight.
So
sorry, just one moment. As Dr. Robinson had mentioned, the time to do that is well before the school year begins. So I think one concern that I have is the authenticity of us listening to student voices. If we actually want to listen to student voices, we need to solicit student voices. And I'm not sure that's something that has happened up to this date. So we may have anecdotal experiences like, oh, the SROs are kind to this student or like have built relationships with this student, but I don't think we have that overwhelming data, and our student representative is giving us that student voice. We should be listening. I'm done, I'm not on the LSC.
Am I good? So, you know, Sam, I don't know if you got the same volume of email that I got, but I know that I personally received at least 250 to 300 emails that came directly from students and from alumni, you know, over the past couple of years. Out of those more than 250 emails, all but 3 supported removing SROs from the school. So I do feel like through the different solicitations that we have, also from the petition that has put out there, that also has 2,500 co-signers out there, I do believe that we have gotten a pretty strong voice coming back from the students, overwhelmingly, in my mind, to remove the SROs. I have such a problem with how CPS has set up this vote. And like Veronica, I have lost sleep over this. I have talked to so many people because, you know, same thing. I can't even think that I have to make a decision that might harm someone else that are in that school. And the way that this vote is coming down is not allowing us to say no, but. Like, I want 3 months to take up this suggestion to have a group to really put together a plan. I want to uphold what we are hearing from our students and other people. We are going to have a security and we have to have a viable security and safety plan, regardless of whether we have SROs in the building or not. While we have 3 months with our students not in the school, I would very much like to take that time to come up with viable plans that reflect what our school safety and security could look like with or without SROs. I am so angry at CPS Central and their absolutely, to my mind, dismissive and rude and politically charged posturing that they are making us take this vote that is going to put our students, that potentially could put our students at risk because we can only say yes or no. That being said, we do have 3 months where students are not in the school. So if we vote to remove the SROs, then this committee must be put together immediately and intentionally so that if we decide to vote out SROs, our safety and security plan for all of our students and our staff and administration is in place and works.
I reviewed the 30-something pages that they had of testimonial from students. And when I looked at it, there were 6 statements that were made that pertained to Jones. 2 of them were positive. 4 of them were actually complaints about something that occurred. Again, although you received the 200 plus emails, when I look at the evidence doesn't say get rid of them. The evidence says there's still a question mark. And that's not trying to minimize anyone's individual experience, but it does say that this is extremely a serious decision and it shouldn't be made off of bad data. And at the current time, there's not good data. We do have time though, because we are going to be in a remote learning posture for a long period of time, which gives us time, but it also allows us to be able to take a strategic move and maintain the capabilities of the SRO until we have better evidence. And this is not saying I'm for the SRO. It simply says I make good decisions based off of good information. And the whole idea that the SRO, they do things against people of color. Well, in case everyone can't figure it out, I'm a Black man. So I get it. I get it big time. But that doesn't say that at Jones, it's a bad thing that's happening. It doesn't say that at all. It simply says that we need more information and to gather it appropriately. And we don't have to rush and let CPS back us into a corner. We simply don't have to do that. We can maintain control because for the next 3 months, or as long as the kids are in remote learning, no one's in jeopardy. But we still maintain the ability to have that safety line. And so that's why I'm asking the question, and I'm really trying to get to a real answer. It's nothing political. It's about the safety of my child and the rest of the children that are there. It's not about political standing up and saying, hey, we want to get rid of the police. Personally, I couldn't care less if we get rid of them or keep them. What I do care about, I care about what's happening in Jones. That's what I care about.
And I agree with that, but are we as a LSC, are we as a school really going to have the urgency to make something happen in those 3 months? One of the things that I am hearing, and I have heard from individuals today and other places, is this is an ongoing issue. I agree with you, Sam. I don't think anyone on this council is taking this decision lightly. Not one person that I spoke to. Community, parent, teacher, Dr. Powers, everyone, we are all taking this incredibly seriously. But are we undertaking it with the urgency that that time gives us? If we vote yes to keep the SROs in tonight, what are we going to do to set time frames and real action to happen so that we can take this next 3 months to come up with a plan that may or may not include SROs? Again, this is why I'm mad at CPS, because they're not allowing us to vote yes, but, or no, and. We just have to say yes or no. And that's where I do feel backed in on that point. But I agree. Every single one of us, our goal is to keep our children and our staff safe. And clearly, I don't think any of us are taking that lightly.
I'd like to say one thing, and that if we do vote yes, then we can get rid of them. So in a way, we're creating our own yes, but. If they don't do what we want them to do, we can get them removed. So I think we should keep that in mind.
I guess I kind of just want to ask, because we've had the SROs previously, right? So it's not like we're getting brand new, this is a brand new program. So I guess kind of like what Lainey was saying, what new system of, I don't know, surveilling the SROs, I don't know if that's really the right word to use, are we going to use? Because I keep hearing, if they do this, if they do that, but they've been here, right? Like what new are they going to be doing? Like what systems, I guess, just like Lainey just said, are we going to put in place to make sure that something is actually happening, right? Like we can't say, like we can't act like this is something new when it's not. And I think that's kind of what we keep hearing from the public, is that these issues have been here. People have always been saying this, but now we're acting like this is something that has just come to us. And I know for a fact that it's not. And I'm only a junior, so imagine, you know, people who've been involved with the community for much long. I mean, I'm a senior, much longer than I have. So yeah, I guess I second what Lainey said.
So Danaya, I think what I was hearing is that this was not so much in evaluating the SROs in action, but evaluating the actual need for them and developing a plan that would be all encompassing to either, you know, do the research and say, yes, we need them for this particular role, or no, we don't need them, and this is our plan in action. If I understand that correctly, this 3 months, because no one's gonna be there, so they actually are not even going to be there. So the SROs won't even be in, we won't be able to evaluate them next month on how they behave because they won't be there. So I think this plan is really to evaluate the whole safety and security and come up with understanding that we have some issues in terms of, how they respond to people. And so how are we going to put things into place so that we develop better community relations? Or, Dr. Power says we have 26 doors that need to be manned. What does that look like? How do we make sure that we have that in place? So, and then go through, I think, various scenarios, I think much deeper than what has ever been done before, because I don't think it's been done before. And I don't think that we have had this really deep dive. And I think also with this, this is also supposed to include students. So we need to have students to be involved in the process, to gather the information, to be able to say, this is how I feel when police officers are around. So how do we deal with these issues? And so I think that that's more about what we're thinking about, is developing a plan that makes sense for everyone, understanding everyone's limitations and understanding what could be, the possibilities of what could be.
Please unmute Ellen. She has her hand up.
Thank you. I'm hearing that there's a lot of thoughts and feelings around SROs right now at Jones. I had asked the question previously about whether the LSC is able to delay this vote in order to do further data collection. The answer is no. No. Veronica?
I asked because obviously this is creating a lot of anxiety, some of which you might have figured out. And we asked, no, we have to vote one way or the other tonight.
I apologize. I'm currently unable to see the chat, which is an interesting Zoom feature that I'm experiencing. But I believe that there are comments in the chat regarding the SRO vote. I'm not sure how those voices are going to be brought to this discussion, or if they will be.
I'm actually not really monitoring the chat. I can look in here.
If I could add something too, I think we've heard a great deal on both sides of this issue. We have spent basically an entire meeting the last time discussing it. We heard from a lot of people then through the chat, now through the live participation, which I'm very thankful for, and I thank everybody for participating. I am committed to having a comprehensive plan put in place where we can talk about the safety and security of our school building, and have a committee or a team put together that will do that, and also act on an ongoing basis. I think we will find that if we look at it objectively, the role of the SRO is to provide that safety, is to provide that guard against the things that can go wrong. Not with the students, not patrolling the hallways, not involved directly in student discipline. That hasn't been the case, and it will not be the case. We have two new SROs, our longtime SROs. One is retiring, the other was promoted to sergeant. They were with us for 14 years. As of last winter, just before the shutdown of school, Officer Perez and Officer Peralta joined us. They are both well-trained officers. They both have gone through the SRO training. They are very attuned to the needs of issues involving everything from de-escalation to relationship building. And I am confident that working together, we can make this work for our school community. It was asked earlier, what happens if a school resource officer is not right for the school, if there's a problem of some sort? The answer to that is that officer will be reassigned. We only need to ask for first district that the officers come out of. And I'll say, if there's an issue, we deal with that issue. If we can't get it corrected, that officer would be removed. That would have been the case also on our previous officers, but we never had cause to have a concern there. So that's kind of wrapping up my own thoughts on this. I want to see a comprehensive plan for safety and security and ongoing monitoring with students, parents, and staff members. And that would then help us to determine how we move forward from this. At this point, I think that's about all I have left to say on the subject. We have covered it pretty comprehensively.
So Dr. Powers, you're saying that in this committee, you would have students as well as parents who would be able to hear any type of issue that a student or a parent may be having with SRO, and there would be a format that would be designed to be able to address those issues.
That can be part of it, yes. I mean, this is something we have not done. We have essentially a safety committee made up of the school resource officers when they have been present, and our own CPS safety and security and school administration. But this would be broadening that to have representation more across the board. And I don't know whether it would be appropriate for that body to act as the channel for concerns, other than the planning and identifying of any concerns there might be. If there are issues, for example, if an officer, if there's some problem like that, that's something that needs to be brought directly to the school administration, so the school administration can address it with the officer, or if necessary, have the officer removed. But yeah, this can be part of our conversation. But it would be a representative group.
I have
The other question I'd ask Dr. Powers is, so for the students of color and anyone else who is actually has an issue with the presence of a police officer or a person in uniform, can there be a format set up to actually develop the relationships or for the particular police that are at Jones, and so that they can understand that just like all people are not alike, all policemen are not alike, and it's important to understand the ones at that school are either for them or against them. If they're against them, then get rid of them. If they're for them, then there's not an issue from that perspective.
I agree with you completely. I think one of the comments that was made by one of the students during public participation was the idea of having the SROs meet with the students in some form or other, so they can get to know who they are. One of the necessities of the job is going to be, like I said, that outward looking aspect to it. But, and that also tends to cut the officers off somewhat from communication with the students, except in passing. But I think there are things we can do that will help build that relationship so the kids get to know who the officers are. Previous schools where I've been, that was very much part of what we had. The officers met with students, they heard what students had to say, they received feedback, and as a result, we had a very successful experience.
And these are things that can be done in this 3-month time period, because if we vote, if there's a vote yes for the SRO, the students are not impacted by their presence or lack thereof because no one's at the school. But in the meantime, these things can be done and put in place, and we will have another meeting, which we can then vote up or down again.
That is my understanding, yes. I think we have that opportunity. If we vote yes tonight, we still have that opportunity to make a change later on, depending on what we decide to do coming out of our deliberations on this.
What would be the process for people who are interested? Because I imagine this would not be an LSC group, but rather a group that would report to the LSC. So what would be the format for, you know, some of these students who are here tonight listening, for them to be able to get engaged and involved?
I think what we're going to have to do is have some organized way. It's not going to be just a matter of send us an email. We're going to have some way in which people can know that I'm interested, I'd like to participate. Obviously, we're not going to be able to have everyone who might want to participate. It can't be an extremely large group because that's unwieldy, but we'll come up with some manner in which we can solicit both parent and student participation and faculty and staff participation as well.
And I think in that group, you know, I understand it can only be so large, but to make sure that there's representation from the different cultural groups who are impacted most, and that way we get the appropriate representation.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other comments from any of the other LSC members? Okay, if there are no further comments, yes, go ahead, Christian. You want?
No, I didn't. I was just unmuting myself.
Okay, you're preparing. You're in mode ready to vote here. All right. So if there are no other further comments, is there a motion to retain the SRO program at Jones College Prep? Is there a motion?
I move that we retain the SRO program, that we vote to retain, yes or no.
Is everybody in the LSC able to unmute themselves?
I don't think Marge cannot.
I'm okay now.
Are you okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Lainey can't. Here, just.
Oh, she's toggling.
Thank you.
You
There you go.
okay? Denaya?
What about Latrice? I haven't heard from her. Is she still there?
I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to make sure that you were unmuted and you could
I'm here, taking it
speak.
all in.
I know it's a lot. Thank you and welcome. Okay, I'm sorry. So is there a second?
Second it.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All against, say no.
No.
Okay. All right. Since this vote is not unanimous, we will do a roll call vote. So those in favor will answer yes. Those opposed will say no. Those who would like to abstain say present. All right, Mr. Ayala, do the roll call.
All right, so I'm going to go in order as we are presented on the agenda. I am first. I'm voting nay. That's no for retainment. Denaya.
No.
That's a nay from Denaya. Lainey.
No.
It's a nay from Lainey. Kristen Kuhn.
No.
It's a nay from Kristen Kuhn. Margaret.
Yes.
Yay from Margaret. Mary Beth.
Yes.
It's a yay from Mary Beth. Latrice.
Yes.
I heard a yay from Latrice. Timothy.
Yes.
Yay from Timothy. Andrew.
Specifically surveyed the teachers last week, and yes, they would like to continue the program.
That's a yay from Andrew. Dr. Powers.
Yes.
It's a yay from Dr. Powers. Dr. Sam Robinson.
Yes.
It's a yay from Dr. Sam Robinson. Dr. Veronica Robinson.
No.
That's a nay from Dr. Veronica Robinson. All right, give me a second to tally these. All right, I have a 7 yay, 5 nay count, so the yays have it. Sorry, Veronica, you're still muted.
I'm sorry. So the yays have it and the resolution is carried. So the Jones College Prep has voted to retain the SROs and so we'll continue on. Is there any old business? Any other old business rather?
If I could just add at this point, I'll be reporting the results directly. I know we do it through our own process, but the LSC office has asked that we do this direct reporting, and I'll be doing that this evening.
Okay. The next business in order is new business. Is there any new business? I just want to put on there for the new business, the safety committee, so that we can put that on so we can maybe kind of hash that out a little bit more as well.
I would really like to see, and within the next week, a more fleshed out plan, and I am happy to help provide some structure on that. But what I would like to be able to do, since the vote was yes, I would like that to be a yes but or a yes and that we really take this time to come up, to very seriously take this time to come up with a safety and security plan that we feel we can all live with, and that this is not just a performative committee, but that we actually really come up, do something with this, put some timelines in it and some accountability for it, both as LSCs, but as individuals, because even retaining the SROs, I think that there is enough questions about what safety and security means at Jones for everyone, that this should absolutely be something we focus on.
I think that's something we certainly can be moving forward with quickly. Please remember, however, we're trying to open school in 4 weeks.
Right, and that's why I'm wondering, obviously, Dr. Powers, your focus, I hope, is there. Please be there.
We've got a pile of things on our agenda right now, and we do want to make sure we're moving forward with this, and we do want to create it. and we will. But we're not going to have this entire thing put together either as a team or the first meetings or anything else within the next week.
Absolutely, I agree with that. But I think if we can start putting together some thoughts from us as an LSC to be able to help do that, I don't think that this should be something that only one person puts together and tries to put through.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I've shared this with Veronica Laney, but I'm ready to jump on board. And we've got some pretty clear paths of communication into Commander Alderton, and that's something that we need to definitely hammer out.
Could it be possible, Dr. Powers, if maybe you did have an LSC member or two on the committee just to kind of help you organize it a little bit? Because I do recognize and appreciate all that you're doing in trying to get this remote learning up and going.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, if somebody can take something off of your plate, you know, or at least, you know, start working on something and then maybe, you know, kind of report that information back to you, it would at least not be you having to, you know, do everything, you know?
Well, I appreciate that. And I wasn't trying to complain about it, but it's just that we've got so many major demands, everything having to be done within the next few weeks. We've been working basically 7 days a week since the shutdown started, and there are only so many hours we can squeeze in to get these things accomplished. We've got some time, let's do it right, much as with some of our other planning. So I would welcome any additional assistance from somebody on the LSC. I think might be a good starting point. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify because, you know, I saw a message in the chat wondering if this was an LSC committee, and it is not an LSC committee, and this is an administrative committee, and so it's going to go under that umbrella. This committee will report back their findings to the LSC and advise the LSC for our vote coming up, you know, in a couple of months before the kids come back to school. But this is not an LSC committee. So if there are parents or students or people who would like to be, who'd like to be on this committee, then I think that you should reach out, okay? I think that that is actually what we want. We really don't want, I'm not going to be on this committee. So, you know, I think that, you know, I think that we could use some more students, some, you know, we love Denaya, but she has a lot of things going on. So it'd be great if we had other students who were represented in voices, other teachers who maybe we don't hear about, you know, all of that. So I just wanted to clarify that piece.
I do think, Veronica, one thing that you just said, do we as an LSC want to commit that after we see this plan that we will re-vote before the kids come back in school on SROs again?
I think so. I think that's why maybe some people voted the way they did, because of the conversation that this could be done in 3 months.
Right.
I just want to, and this was a yes and, not a yes, period.
I think that we are, because the whole idea, Lainey, is that we want accountability, but we're not just going to jump just because we feel like we're pressured.
And I definitely feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all agreeing that we're going to keep a close look at it.
I think Dr. Powers was trying to say something.
Yes, with regard to, you know, having an additional feedback and vote, we may very well have to have a special meeting because the October meeting is the last one before school might, quote, reopen if we go to a hybrid plan starting in the second quarter. And the next meeting in November is after that starts. So we may have to have in late October a special meeting to deal with this. But I will leave that up to the LSC. We can decide that, I would presume, at our next meeting.
I think I would like to hear, once you all start to develop this committee, what the feasibility is in terms of getting back to us for either a early October or, I mean, I'm sorry, October versus November vote again and presentation. So yeah, I think I would have to defer to you all in terms of getting this up and running as fast as possible and whatever you're able to do in regard to getting back to us. And then we will definitely put that on the agenda.
We'll see if this can be done by the October meeting, but if not, something in between.
I mean, I think we can bring it to the LSC, but I think that they've been really flexible and great about these very important issues. So is there any other new business? Okay. Our next meeting will be September 15th at 5:30 p.m. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? It sounds like it was seconded and moved, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank you.
have a great evening. Take
Have
care.
a nice evening.